The oatmeal at Rosewood Senior Living was always too sweet, so I was pushing raisins around my bowl when my phone rang. "Frank, when did you decide to sell the house?" Martha Bell asked. My spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. "Sell what house?" Rain tapped behind her voice. "Yours. There's a sign out front." I almost laughed. Scott had told me the bathroom was torn apart for safety work. Then Martha said, "Frank, it doesn't say for sale. It says sale pending." Before we continue, subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're listening from today. I'm Franklin Mercer, 74, retired after 39 years inspecting aerospace components at Cascade Aeronautics Components. That job taught me that when two facts didn't match, you stopped and checked. 3 weeks earlier, I'd slipped beside my workbench in the garage of the Lake Oswego home Elaine and I had owned for more than 40 years. 2 cracked ribs, a bruised hip, one night in the hospital. Scott arrived before discharge with a plan. 2 or 3 weeks at Rosewood, Dad. I'll redo the downstairs bath, add grab bars, fix the garage step, then you go home. Scott owned Mercer Residential Renovations. Making old houses safer was his business. I trusted him. So did Lily, my granddaughter, an occupational therapist. "Give Dad time to make it safe, Grandpa," she'd told me. So I had. Now Martha was telling me my home was under contract. "Maybe you mean the Henderson place." "Frank, I ran a flower shop for 32 years. I can read an address. The sign is beside Elaine's hydrangeas." My chest tightened. "Don't call Scott," I said. Martha paused. "Why would I call Scott? Just take a picture." My phone chimed a minute later. Wet pavement, my cedar fence, Elaine's hydrangeas. A white real estate post stood in my lawn. Beneath the agent's name hung a red panel. Sale pending. Scott had never mentioned an agent, buyers, or selling the house where we'd raised him and where Elaine had spent her last winter. Yet somebody had accepted an offer. I opened Scott's contact, ready to call, then stopped. 39 years in quality control had taught me not to disturb a failing process before I understood the failure. If Scott thought I knew nothing, that was the only advantage I had. I texted Martha, "Please don't mention this yet." Her reply came immediately, "All right." But a couple was there yesterday measuring the living room. Strangers had already been inside. Then I opened my last exchange with Scott. The night before I'd asked, "How's the bathroom coming?" He'd answered, "Slow. Contractors found more water damage. Probably another couple weeks. Don't worry about the house. I've got it handled." I looked from his words to Martha's photograph. For the first time, "I've got it handled" sounded like a warning. Someone had been measuring my living room while my son kept me 40 minutes away and told me I couldn't come home yet. What, exactly, had Scott believed I would never find out? I did not call Scott that morning. I waited until his usual Thursday visit and spent the hours before he arrived behaving normally. At 3:17, he walked into Rosewood carrying coffee and turkey chili. "The good kind," he said. "Not whatever they serve here." He set the food down. "Hip still bothering you?" "Only when I move." He smiled. So constantly. It was easy, familiar. That was what made it difficult. Scott had driven Elaine to chemotherapy when I could not leave work. He had sat beside me at her funeral without trying to fill the silence. I watched him open the blinds and wondered how that son could also be the man selling my house. "How's the bathroom coming?" I asked. His back stayed to me. "Messy. Still water damage?" A brief pause. "More than I expected. Old houses hide things. When can I go home?" Scott handed me the coffee. "Couple weeks, probably. You said that last week. I'd rather annoy you now than have you fall again because I rushed." I nodded. Then I asked, "You haven't made any decisions about the house, have you?" He turned. "What kind of decisions? Selling, renting, anything permanent?" His expression barely moved. "Dad, no. Of course not." The answer was too clean. "Why would you ask me that?" Martha mentioned seeing people there. Scott laughed softly. "Contractors. I told you that. You've had a rough month. Let me handle the house. That's why I'm here." The phrase landed differently now. "Handle it how? Repairs, insurance, bills, whatever needs doing until you're back on your feet. And if I'm not?" His face changed for less than a second. "Not fear. Calculation. Then we'll make decisions together." I held his gaze. "The house isn't going anywhere?" Scott squeezed my forearm. "The house isn't going anywhere. I could have shown him Martha's photograph. Instead, I covered his hand with mine. Good, I said. Elaine loved that place. His eyes dropped at her name. Then he started talking about Sunday dinner with Lily. I let him. If Scott believed I knew nothing, I wanted to keep it that way until I understood what he thought gave him the right to lie to my face. After his truck disappeared beyond the wet cedar trees, I called Marianne Cole, the estate lawyer Elaine and I had used for years. Frank? She said, it's been a while. I need to ask you something, and I need you not to call Scott. Her tone sharpened. All right. I shut my room door. After Elaine died, did I ever sign anything that gave my son authority over my house? Silence. Not surprise. Recognition. Frank, why are you asking? My house is under contract. Scott just told me nothing has been done with it. The silence stretched. Then Marianne said, come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring nothing from Scott and sign nothing he gives you. My grip tightened. Why? Because I remember the documents you signed after Elaine died. So he can sell it? I didn't say that, her voice lowered. But this may be bigger than a house sale. Before tomorrow, don't confront him again. I stared at the rain sliding down the rosewood window. Marianne, what exactly did I sign? She took a breath. Something that may allow Scott to argue he isn't acting against your wishes at all. He may be acting in your place. By 9 the next morning, I was sitting across from Marianne Cole with Martha's photograph between us. Marianne opened an old file and said, before we talk about Scott, tell me what you remember signing after Elaine died. A power of attorney. Medical forms. The trust update. Why the power of attorney? Scott said if something happened to me, somebody needed to pay the bills. She slid a document toward me. My signature was at the bottom, dated 18 months earlier. This is a durable power of attorney, she said. It gives Scott broad financial authority. Then stop him from selling the house. Marianne did not answer quickly enough. Frank, I can challenge a sale. What I can't do is ignore the rest of this file. She turned over a second page. Cedar Ridge Family Medicine was printed across the top. At the bottom was Dr. Nathan Keene's signature. Nathan had been my doctor for 11 years. What's this? A physician certification submitted after your fall. I read the first lines twice. Concerns regarding impaired judgment. Recent confusion. Safety risk in independent living. Nathan never told me I was incompetent. It doesn't say that. But Scott used this certification to establish that the circumstances contemplated by your documents had occurred. The rain against her windows suddenly sounded louder. 3 weeks earlier, the sequence had seemed simple. I fell. Scott came to the hospital. Doctor. Keene worried about another fall. And Rosewood became a temporary place to recover while my bathroom was remodeled. On Marianne's desk, the same sequence looked different. My fall had not merely sent me to Rosewood, it had opened a door. Did Nathan examine me for this? The certification references your hospital visit and follow-up information. I don't yet know what he personally observed and what someone else reported. Someone else meaning Scott? Possibly. We verify before we accuse. I pushed the page away. Scott was at the hospital before I was discharged. He brought me to Rosewood. Then he put my house on the market. Which is why we need the transaction file. If he believes he's acting under valid authority, accusing him now only warns him before we understand what he's done. He lied to my face. That matters. But a lie and an invalid transaction are not the same question. I hated the distinction because she was right. At Cascade Aeronautics, when a component failed inspection, you did not decide why before tracing the process. What can we do today? I can contact the title company and request the basis for Scott's authority. But the moment I interfere, he'll know you're challenging him. So I lose the only advantage I have. Yes. I looked again at Nathan's signature. He had called me after Elaine died because he knew I wasn't sleeping. If a doctor I trusted truly had concerns about me, maybe Scott had not invented everything. That frightened me more than the sale sign. Marianne, could Scott honestly believe he's helping me? Yes. And still be wrong? Absolutely. I hesitated. Could I be wrong? She met my eyes. Yes. That answer settled something in me. Then don't stop the sale yet. Marianne leaned back. That's a risk. So is charging into this because I'm angry. I want to know whether my son used my fall to protect me or to replace me. She studied me, then nodded. 48 hours. I'll request the relevant records and sale documents. You sign nothing. If Scott asks about this meeting, call me. I reached for my coat. Marianne stopped me. Frank, look at the date. Dr. Keene had signed the certification 2 days after my fall. I had still been in the hospital. Scott told me Rosewood came up during discharge planning. Marianne checked another page. Rosewood received an inquiry about placement that same morning. I stared at her. The bathroom repairs, the temporary stay, Scott telling me not to worry, those conversations had come later. So before Scott ever told me I needed a few weeks away from home, he was already preparing for me not to be there? Marianne closed the file. That's what we need to understand. And now the most important question isn't who put a sale sign in your yard. She rested her hand on Dr. Keene's certification. It's what Scott told your doctor about you before he started making decisions in your name. Marianne's 48 hours lasted less than 1 day. The next morning, a man in a navy suit appeared at Rosewood while I was doing balance exercises. He waited until I sat down, then handed me an envelope. Franklin Mercer, you've been served. Inside was a petition filed by Grant Holloway on Scott's behalf seeking temporary guardianship and conservatorship. Marianne arrived 40 minutes later and found me at the table by my window. He moved fast, I said. Our title inquiry reached Scott's closing attorney yesterday. She opened the petition. Frank, this isn't Scott admitting he lacked authority. He's asking a judge to confirm that you need someone acting for you. He described the night I'd left my garage door open until morning. True. A cardiology appointment I'd missed after Elaine died. True. The night I'd accidentally taken my evening medication twice and called him dizzy. Also true. My phone rang. Scott. Marianne looked at me. Your choice, I answered. Why is a lawyer interfering with the house? Scott asked. Why is the house being sold? Silence. Then his voice softened. I was trying to avoid this. You get upset, fixate on one detail, and suddenly everyone is against you. You told me the house wasn't going anywhere, because I didn't want this conversation while you were recovering. That's called lying. Fine, the house isn't safe for you anymore. I accepted an offer under the authority you gave me. The money stays yours. It pays for your care. I'm not buying a boat, Dad. Why didn't you ask me? I've asked you for 2 years to make changes. You refused because Mom chose the wallpaper. Mom planted the hydrangeas. Mom loved that kitchen. I miss her too. But grief doesn't make stairs safer. Then why tell me contractors were fixing the bathroom? I asked. A pause. Because if I'd said we needed to sell, would you have listened? You lied. I managed a situation you weren't managing. There it was. Not a confession. A belief. And now you're asking a judge to manage me. Temporarily. Until someone neutral looks at what's happening. After you already decided the answer. Scott exhaled. Yesterday you had a lawyer interfere with a transaction you authorized me to handle. Now you're accusing me of stealing your home. What am I supposed to think? Think about why I don't trust you. I am, Dad. That's why I'm worried. He ended the call after saying Grant would handle legal questions. I lowered the phone. He believes some of it, I said. Marianne nodded. I think he does. Marianne turned to Scott's request for emergency restrictions, preventing me from changing estate documents or moving significant funds while the court evaluated my capacity. Can he do this? I asked. He can ask. The judge decides. And while she decides, if temporary restrictions are granted, you may not be able to undo the authority we're challenging. I looked at the petition again. And if the judge believes him? Marianne hesitated. Financial control could be assigned while the case proceeds. Possibly to Scott. Possibly to an independent fiduciary. And where I live? That can become part of a guardianship dispute too. I looked around my Rosewood room. Rented furniture. Generic landscape prints. My suitcase still half unpacked because I had never considered this home. Suddenly the room felt smaller. Until then, the worst outcome had been losing the house Elaine and I had shared for 4 decades. Now I understood Scott could win something more fundamental. The legal power to tell me I wasn't allowed to go back to it. What do we do? I asked. Independent capacity evaluation. Quickly. We don't win this by proving Scott hurt your feelings. We prove you can still make your own decisions. And if I can't? Marianne did not offer comfort. Then we deal with what the evidence says. She closed the file. Yesterday we were asking whether Scott exceeded a power of attorney. Today he's asking the court whether you should have that power back at all. After she left, I stared at the signature line beneath Scott's declaration. He had not panicked when challenged. He had taken the worst months after Elaine's death mistakes I had admitted to him because he was my son and turned them into a case against me. And if a judge believed his version, the sale pending sign might become the least important thing Scott could take from me. The person I wanted to call after Marianne left was Lily. I didn't. That evening she called me. "Grandpa, can I come by tomorrow?" Her voice had the careful softness she used with frightened patience. "You don't need an appointment." She arrived after work in navy scrubs, carrying coffee from the place Elaine used to like. Lily had spent half her childhood at our house, doing homework at Elaine's kitchen table and marking her height inside the pantry door. If anyone understood what that place meant, I thought it would be her. She set the coffee down but kept her coat on. "Dad told me about the petition." "Of course he did. Please don't make this about sides." She sat across from me. "Why did you send a lawyer after Dad?" "Because he's selling my house. He said the sale is for your care." "Did he mention telling me there was no sale?" Her eyes dropped. "He said you wouldn't agree. That's not the same thing." "No, but neither is it the whole story." Then she reminded me of things I wished she'd forgotten. The afternoon I'd called because I couldn't remember whether I'd taken my medication. The Christmas after Elaine died when I left a burner on. The day road construction confused me on the way to Lily's apartment. "You told your father all that?" "Some of it, because I was worried. That hurt more than Scott's petition. You think I can't take care of myself. I think capable people can still need help." She leaned forward. "I work with patients who can balance a checkbook and tell you exactly what year it is, but still aren't safe living alone." "I'm one of your patients now?" "No, you're my grandfather. That's why this is harder." I wanted to list Scott's lies. Instead I said, "Your father took my choices away." Lily's jaw tightened. "And what if he thought he was keeping you alive?" She wasn't simply repeating Scott. Her own work had taught her to fear exactly what he was describing. "Did he tell you what happens to the money?" I asked. "It stays for you." "How do you know?" "Dad showed me the plan." I went still. "What plan?" He said the house costs too much to keep empty, and long-term care could get expensive. The proceeds would be invested for you. Suddenly, Scott's actions could be arranged into something almost respectable, and you believed him. "I believe my dad loves you." That wasn't my question. Lily stood and walked to the window. "I've watched him leave work to take you to appointments. I've watched him check your prescriptions. I've watched him worry." So had I. That was the part I couldn't file neatly under betrayal. "Lily, look at me. Do I seem incapable of deciding where I live?" Her eyes filled. "Right now?" "No." "Then tell him to withdraw the petition." "I can't." "Can't or won't." She swallowed. "What if you're having good days and bad days? What if this is a good day?" Scott saying I was impaired made me angry. Lily wondering whether I was impaired made me afraid. "Is that why you came?" "I came because I don't want you and Dad destroying each other." "Then ask him why he lied." I did. "And?" "He said if he'd told you before the sale was ready, grief would have made you refuse everything." I gave a dry laugh. "So disagreeing with him proves I'm confused." Lily didn't answer. That silence was worse than an argument. She picked up her bag. At the door I asked, "If Grant asks you to testify, what will you say?" Her hand stayed on the handle. "The truth." "Whose?" She turned, tears in her eyes. "Mine. That I love you, that I've seen things that scared me, and that I don't know whether you're remembering all of them." After she left, I sat in the dark. For the first time since Martha's call, I wasn't thinking about the house. I was replaying every mistake Scott had listed and wondering about the ones I might not remember. Near midnight, I called Marianne. "Set up the independent evaluation." "Are you sure?" "I want someone who doesn't work for you or Scott. Someone who doesn't care who wins." "I can arrange that. And if the answer is that he's right, you tell me." I looked at the coffee Lily had left unopened. I had begun this fight believing my son was taking away my choices. Now the person I trusted most after Elaine was gone had left me with a more frightening question. What if Scott had lied about the house, but told the truth about me. Dr. Priya Shah did not ask me whether I knew who the president was. She asked me what I would do if my roof needed replacing, and two contractors gave me estimates $20,000 apart. I'd ask what each estimate includes, I said. Then I'd check materials, permits, warranties, and references. She made a note. I could not tell whether it was a good answer, and she gave me no reassurance. Over 3 appointments, Doctor. Shah tested memory, reasoning, attention, medication management, and whether I understood the consequences of my choices. She asked about the stove, the missed appointment, the wrong medication dose, and the drive to Lily's apartment. On the final afternoon, she closed her folder. Mr. Mercer, grief, stress, pain medication, and ordinary aging can all affect attention. I found no evidence today that you lack the capacity to understand and make your own financial or residential decisions. I stared at her. You're saying I'm fine? My eyes burned before I could stop them. For weeks I had wanted someone to tell Scott he was wrong. Instead, the relief came from hearing that I was still allowed to be imperfect without becoming somebody else's responsibility. Marianne was waiting downstairs. I handed her Dr. Shah's preliminary findings. She read them once and smiled for the first time since this began. This changes the posture of the case. Does it stop Scott? It gives us strong grounds to oppose the petition and challenge continued reliance on his authority. It doesn't erase Dr. Keene's earlier concerns. Then we move before Grant does. That was my decision. I was tired of waiting for other people to decide whether I was permitted to act. Over the next 2 days, Marianne notified the relevant parties that I was revoking Scott's authority and contesting the pending sale. The closing remained frozen. Then she put one more document in front of me at Cole and Barlow. Read every page, she said. It was an amendment to the Mercer Family Trust. Scott would no longer serve as successor trustee. An independent fiduciary would take that role, and any future disposition of the house would require valid authorization from me while I retained capacity. If I sign this, Scott can't simply wait for the noise to die down and try again, not through the same route. And you are not asking me to sign because you think it's best for me. Marianne understood the question. No, I'm explaining your options. You decide. I read it again. I signed. Marianne witnessed it, then asked once more whether the choice was mine. Completely, I said. The next morning, Rosewood's discharge coordinator called to discuss what support I would need if I returned home. For the first time, going home felt real. I almost called Lily next. I wanted to tell her Dr. Shah's conclusion, to hear relief in her voice, maybe even an apology. Instead, I stopped. If Lily came back to me, I wanted it to be because she trusted me, not because I waved a doctor's report like a winning ticket. That evening, Scott called. I heard you had another evaluation. I did. And you can ask Grant. Silence. Dad, this isn't a game. I know. If you're competent, then you understand what that house costs to maintain. You understand what happens if you fall again. I do. And you're still stopping the sale. Yes. His voice hardened, but only slightly. Then this was never about whether you could understand. It's about whether you'll listen to anyone. Listening isn't the same as surrendering the decision. He was quiet for several seconds. Did Marianne have you sign anything? I looked at the copy of the trust amendment on my desk. Why? Because she's moving fast while you're angry. You moved faster. Scott exhaled. Dad, please, don't turn one good evaluation into proof that everyone else was wrong about everything. Dr. Shah had not declared me invincible. She had given me something simpler. My own voice back. 2 days later, Marianne called. The title company has acknowledged the revocation. The sale cannot close under Scott's prior authority. I sat down. So it's over? The sale, for now. The guardianship petition is still pending, but Grant has a much harder road. I closed my eyes and pictured my front door, my workbench, Elaine's kitchen. For the first time since Martha's call, I let myself believe I was going home. Then Marianne said, Frank, don't celebrate yet. A new filing had arrived from Grant Holloway. Scott was no longer arguing only that I needed protection now. He was challenging the one document I'd just signed. His claim was simple. Whatever Dr. Shah thought of me today, I had not been competent when I changed the trust. Marianne read Grant Holloway's new filing to me the next morning at Rosewood. He's asking Judge Sloan to suspend the trust amendment until the capacity hearing. On what basis? Timing. She laid 3 dates on the table. My fall, Doctor. Keen's certification, and the day I signed the amendment. Grant's argument is that Dr. Shaw evaluated you after your medications were reduced and your condition stabilized. He says her opinion cannot prove you had capacity on the exact day you changed the trust. If he can frame this as an elderly man in a disputed period of capacity being rushed into changing his estate by the lawyer fighting his son, Judge Sloan may preserve the old arrangement until a full hearing, so he doesn't have to prove I'm incompetent. Not yet. He only needs enough uncertainty to justify freezing things. Marianne slid another exhibit across the table. Dr. Nathan Keen's certification. Grant is relying heavily on this. Nathan has known me 11 years. Exactly. Grant will argue that Dr. Shaw saw you 3 times after the dispute began, while Dr. Keen knew your baseline before the fall. Then I want to talk to him. Marianne shook her head. That afternoon, Scott came to Rosewood without calling first. He stopped in my doorway when he saw Marianne packing her briefcase. Scott waited until she was gone. She's turning every conversation into a case file. Your lawyer filed the case. He pulled out the chair Lily had used and sat down. I heard you're planning to go home. That's the idea. Alone? With whatever help I decide I need. Scott rubbed his jaw. That's the problem, Dad. When something happens, it isn't only your risk. Lily gets the call. I leave a job site. Somebody finds you on a garage floor. You could have told me the truth, I said. And you could have admitted the house wasn't working anymore. Those are not equal things. He leaned forward. You think I'm fighting over a building. I'm fighting because every time I tried to talk about what changed after Mom died, you treated it like an insult. So you decided my answer didn't count. I decided waiting for you to agree might get you hurt. Then why challenge the trust? I asked. If this is about safety, what does my successor trustee have to do with whether I fall? Scott's eyes held mine. Because you changed a major estate document days after accusing me of stealing from you. If Lily did that after a medical crisis, you'd ask questions too. He stood. The next morning, Marianne called. Judge Rebecca Sloan had granted a temporary administrative freeze on the disputed amendment until the hearing. Scott did not regain unrestricted control of the house, and the sale remained blocked, but my new amendment could not yet be treated as settled. How bad? I asked. Manageable, Marianne said. But Grant succeeded at one thing. He created a conflict between 2 medical pictures of you. Dr. Shaw says I can decide. Nathan says I can't. Not exactly. Dr. Keen documented concerns at an earlier point. That's why we need to know what those concerns were based on. And if they were based on him watching me? Marianne paused. Then Grant has a credible argument that your condition changed over time and the hearing becomes harder. Get Nathan's records, I said. Through the proper process. Already requested. Then Marianne called again. Her voice had changed. We received confirmation about Dr. Keen. As Scott's witness? As a physician with first-hand history, Grant intends to use him to argue that Dr. Shaw's evaluation shows how you function now, not necessarily how you were functioning when this began. I looked at my suitcase. Scott had found the one person whose opinion I could not dismiss as family fear or legal strategy. If Nathan stood in court and said he'd watched me losing my judgment before my fall, Scott might not need to prove I was incapable today. He might only need Judge Sloan to believe there had been a window when I wasn't, and that the decisions I made inside that window could not be trusted. Dr. Keen's records arrived the next afternoon. Did Nathan think I was losing my mind? I asked. That's not how he wrote it. Marianne. She turned the pages toward me. The notes documented my fall, pain medication, sleep problems, grief, the medication mistake, and concerns about living alone. Some observations were Nathan's. Others were listed as family-reported history. Scott? The records don't always identify the source line by line. We can ask Dr. Keen under oath. I read a phrase twice. Intermittent confusion reported by family. So we still don't know. We know enough to understand why Grant wants him. Rosewood called me this morning, I said. Marianne's face changed. About discharge? I nodded. The administrator had been polite. Because my return home was now part of a contested guardianship matter, Rosewood wanted a documented care plan and clarity about who could authorize it before discharging me to live alone. Can they keep me here? I asked. This isn't detention, Frank, but if you leave against medical advice while Scott is arguing impaired judgment, Grant will use it. So I can leave, as long as I'm willing to prove him right. Marianne didn't answer. My phone buzzed. Lily. I almost ignored it, then answered. Hi, Grandpa. Hi. Dad said your discharge got delayed. Your father knows a lot about my schedule. Please don't do that. Do what? Make every sentence a test. I'll call you later. Wait. Grant asked if I'd speak at the hearing. My hand tightened around the phone. And will you? Silence. Lily, I think I have to. Have to for whom? For me. If I refuse because I love you, then I'm doing exactly what you're accusing Dad of doing, deciding the answer before anyone asks the question. What are you going to tell them? What I told you, the medication, the stove, the driving. That some days you've seemed overwhelmed, and that I don't know what I'm doing. I never said that. You won't have to. Grant will ask the questions. What do you want from me, Grandpa? Do you want me to lie? No. Tell the truth. I love you. I closed my eyes. I know. She's testifying? Marianne asked. I nodded. Grant can subpoena her regardless. Her agreeing voluntarily doesn't determine what Judge Sloan believes. I'm not worried about Judge Sloan right now. Back at Rosewood, I opened my suitcase and took out the old brass key to the Lake Oswego house. I'd carried it in my pocket when I came here because Scott had told me I'd be gone 2 or 3 weeks. That night, Scott called. Lily told me she's testifying. You must be proud. I'm sorry she's in the middle. You put her there. So did you. Then Scott said, Dad, withdraw the trust amendment. Let an independent fiduciary manage the money if you don't trust me. We can stop fighting about that. I hesitated. And the house? We get an independent assessment of whether you can live there safely. If the answer is no, we sell. Who decides what safe means? That's exactly why we need professionals. And if I disagree with them? Scott was quiet. Then we're back where we started. Maybe you should have the damn house, I said. Scott did not answer. Is that what you wanted to hear? No. His voice had lost its edge. I wanted you to stop making the house a test of whether we love you. After the call, I phoned Marianne. What happens if I withdraw everything? Everything meaning the amendment challenge. The guardianship fight, the house, all of it. Scott's petition doesn't disappear just because you stop opposing it, but it gets easier for him. Yes. I stared at Elaine's key in my palm. Maybe that's better than Lily sitting in court choosing between us. Frank, you told me this stopped being about the house when you realized someone else could decide where you live. I know what I said. Then don't give away that decision just to make the people you love more. I'm comfortable. What if they're right? Then the process should be able to show that without requiring you to surrender first. And if fighting costs me, Lily? I can't promise what this costs, she said. I can only make sure the choice to continue is yours. Then I need to know one thing before I decide. What? Not whether Dr. Keene thinks I'm capable now. I want to know exactly what made him sign that certification in the first place. Marianne nodded. Then that's where we focus. I put the key back in my pocket instead of the suitcase. I had come within one sentence of surrendering the house, the trust, and perhaps my right to choose where I spent the rest of my life, not because Scott had beaten me, but because I was afraid of losing Lily. And now the only way forward led back to the first fact everyone had accepted without questioning. What had Dr. Keene actually known about me when he decided my son needed to step in? The morning of the hearing, I put Elaine's brass house key in my jacket pocket. Judge Rebecca Sloan entered just after 9. Scott sat beside Grant Holloway across the aisle. Lily sat behind them, hands locked together. Grant began with Dr. Nathan Keene. Doctor, before Mr. Mercer's fall, had you developed concerns about his ability to live independently? I had concerns about safety and possible cognitive change. Was your certification fabricated? No. Did Scott Mercer force you to sign it? No. Did you believe intervention was appropriate? At that time, yes. Grant sat down. Marianne stood. Dr. Keene, when you wrote increasing confusion, what did you personally observe? Mr. Mercer was fatigued, in pain, and somewhat disoriented after the fall. Where did the history of nighttime wandering, repeated falls, unsafe driving, and appliances being left on come from? Nathan paused. His son provided most of that history. Did you independently verify each event? No. Collateral information from close relatives is often relevant after an injury. Grant rose for redirect. Doctor, do families routinely report things patients minimize or forget? Yes. So information coming from Scott does not make it false? Correct. Then Lily testified. Grant asked about the stove, the medication, and the drive to her apartment. Did your grandfather seem different after his wife's death? Yes. Did that frighten you? Sometimes. Do you believe your father was trying to harm him? Lily looked at Scott. No. I believe my dad was scared. Marianne asked her, did your grandfather ever tell you he wanted Scott to sell his house without telling him? No. Dr. Priya Shah testified next. She explained why mistakes did not automatically equal incapacity and why I had demonstrated the ability to understand choices and consequences. Grant attacked only one thing: time. You evaluated Mr. Mercer after his injury and after his medications changed? Yes. Can your evaluation prove his exact cognitive state weeks earlier? No evaluation can recreate a past moment with certainty. Dr. Shah could say I was capable when she saw me. Dr. Keene could say he had legitimate concerns earlier. Lily could say she loved me and had been frightened. All three could be true. When the hearing resumed, Grant called Scott. My son spoke quietly about the medication mistake, calls from Lily, appointments, and my refusal to discuss leaving the house after Elaine died. What did you intend to do with the sale proceeds? Keep them for Dad's housing and care. Why didn't you tell him the house was under contract? Scott swallowed. Every conversation about leaving that house ended with Mom. I thought if I solved the practical part first, he'd eventually see I wasn't taking her away from him. Did you believe your father needed protection? I still do, Marianne approached. When did you first believe your father lacked capacity to make major financial decisions? Around the fall. And once you believed that, you began acting under the power of attorney? Yes. Marianne displayed a timeline. After Dr. Keene's certification, did you continue asking your father to approve matters connected to preparing the property for sale? Routine matters. She showed an authorization dated after the certification. Did you believe he understood what he was approving here? Grant objected. Judge Sloan allowed it. Scott took a breath. Yes, in that instance. Then, when he objected to a permanent move, did you believe he understood that? He was reacting emotionally. So when his decision aligned with yours, he understood. When it didn't, he was impaired? That's not what I said. Capacity isn't all or nothing. I agree. Explain the difference. Scott leaned toward the microphone. He could understand individual facts and still fail to appreciate the risk of living alone. Marianne changed direction. Then why rely on his approval in a transaction involving the house if you believed he could not appreciate the consequences surrounding that house? Scott hesitated. Because selling it reduced the risk. Whether he agreed or not? Scott looked at me. Yes. Marianne returned to the trust amendment. Your position is that Frank could not be trusted to change his estate because his judgment was compromised. At that time, yes. Yet in that same period, when his approvals advanced the sale, you treated them as meaningful? I treated them in context. And who decided the context? Scott didn't answer. Judge Sloan recessed for 20 minutes. I found Lily near the elevators. You told the truth, I said. She wiped her face. I hurt you. Both can be true. Dad really was scared. I know. Does that matter? I touched the key in my pocket. More than it did when this started. Then why keep fighting? I could have said because he lied or because the house was mine. Instead, I said, because being afraid for someone doesn't make you the owner of their choices. Lily lowered her eyes. I don't know what happens after this. Neither do I. For once, I wasn't asking her to choose me. When court resumed, Judge Sloan said Dr. Keene's concerns had been legitimate but substantially informed by collateral reports, not a determination that I lacked decision-making capacity. Dr. Shah supported my present capacity. Most importantly, the record did not justify guardianship merely because my choices carried risks or my family disagreed with them. Scott's petition was denied. The temporary restrictions would be lifted, and my trust amendment would stand. Marianne exhaled beside me. Across the aisle, Scott stared at the table. I had won. But when I closed my hand around Elaine's key, victory did not feel like getting my house back. It felt like getting the right to answer a harder question nobody else could answer for me. Now that I was free to go home, did I still want to? I went back to the Lake Oswego house 3 days after Judge Sloan's ruling. When I unlocked the door, the house smelled like cedar, dust, and the lemon cleaner Elaine used for 30 years. I stood in the entryway with my hand on the knob and listened to the refrigerator hum. For weeks, getting through that door had been the goal. Now that nobody could stop me, I wasn't sure I wanted to stay. Scott had been right about some things. The downstairs bathroom was narrow. The garage step was awkward. The stairs felt steeper than they had 5 years earlier. For months after Elaine died, I had treated every object she touched as if moving it would erase her. My phone rang. Marianne. Nothing involving the house moves unless you decide it moves. Rosewood can complete your discharge now. We can arrange in-home support if that's what you want. I looked toward the stairs. Give me a week. I had a safety assessment done. I sat alone in Elaine's chair one evening and asked myself the question Scott should have allowed me to answer from the beginning. Do I still want to live here? No. Not like this. Before listing it, I spent one final Sunday there. I packed Elaine's recipe cards, donated the dining set we had stopped using years before, and left the pencil marks inside the pantry door untouched for the next family to find. When I reached Lily's childhood height marks, I realized keeping a house and keeping a family were not the same thing. One could be sold without erasing the other. I called Marianne the next morning. I want to sell the house. She was silent. You're sure? No. But I'm certain it's my decision. The proceeds went into the trust under the independent fiduciary's management for my future needs. The difference was not the sale. The difference was consent. A week before closing, Scott came to the house. He stood on the porch rather than walking in with his old key. Can I come in? He asked. Yes. We sat at the kitchen table. He looked around at the packed boxes. So you're selling? I am. You know what I want to say? That you were right? Partly. I nodded. You were right that this house had become too much for me. You were wrong that being right gave you the right to decide for me. Scott stared at the table. I thought if I waited for you to be ready, you'd never be ready. Maybe. And if you'd fallen again, you would have had to live with being scared. I would have had to live with the consequences of my choice. He looked up. That's easy to say when the choice works out. No, that's when it matters. Then Scott said, I was angry too. About what? You kept talking about the house like it was you and Mom against everybody else. I spent years helping with it, fixing things, missing work, and every time I suggested a change it was like I was trying to erase her. I should have listened, I said. Scott looked at me. So should I. Scott walked through the kitchen once before leaving and stopped at the doorway to the garage. I really was scared when they called me that night, he said. I know, I answered. Understanding his fear did not excuse what he had done. It simply meant I no longer needed him to be a monster in order for my boundary to matter. Lily visited my new place 2 weeks later. She stepped onto my small balcony carrying 2 coffees. I brought the good kind. I smiled. Your father used to say that. Have you talked to him? Once. How was it? Unfinished. She handed me a cup. I'm sorry I testified. Don't be. But it hurt you. You told the truth as you understood it. I asked you to do that. She sat beside me. I thought protecting you meant making sure you made the safest choice. So did your father. And now? I looked over the river. Now I think safety is something you help people understand. It isn't something you use to make them disappear from their own decisions. Can I come back next weekend? You never needed permission. After she left, I opened the small drawer beside my chair. Elaine's brass house key lay inside. When this began, that key had felt like proof that the house was mine and Scott had no right to take it. Now it meant something else. I had sold the house myself. I had chosen the agent, accepted the offer, signed the papers, and chosen where I would live next. Scott had wanted almost the same physical outcome. That was what made the lesson so easy to miss. Love can be sincere and still become control. Concern can be justified and still cross a line. Being right about what someone should do does not give you ownership of the decision. I set the key beside my coffee and watched the morning light move across the river. A month earlier, my son had decided I could no longer live in my own home. In the end, I decided I didn't want to. The house was gone either way. The difference was that this time, the life on the other side of the door was mine.